In my book, pound for pound, nothing beats Sublime Text for the feeling of speed and stability that it gives you. As of today, if you took Sublime Text away from me and made me choose another editor to use day to day, I would choose Panic's Nova. Let me show you why. The truth is, I spend most of my working day with text editors, so I'm always interested to see how different applications solve a problem space that I'm very familiar with. Now, principally, I write code for a living, but I've also used a text editor to write books, to write articles, even screenplays. So I know what you're thinking, Ben, you can't be a day over 25. But unfortunately that's not the case, so I've got quite a long and checkered history with different text editors. So I've even made a list here because I couldn't remember half of them unless I wrote them down. So at various times I've used PageMill, Dreamweaver, Espresso, CSS Edit, TextMate, BB Edit and Text Wrangler. What else have we got here? Coda, of course, Sublime Text, Vim, and more recently VS Code, and also sort of smaller stints with things like brackets and Atom. Throughout all of that, the thing that I've realised that I value most with text editors is speed, or at least the impression of speed. And that brings me to the blue elephant in the room and why nothing as yet has taken me away from Sublime Text. So despite the complete domination of VS Code in the hearts and minds of developers everywhere, I just don't seem able to stick with it. The truth of the matter is, it's slow. Sorry, it is. Yes, it is fantastic. Yes, it's very, very capable. It's got every extension you could possibly imagine. It's got almost everything that you could want from an editor, but it's just intangibly a little bit slow. I'm talking about not just the fact that it's a bit slower to start up, well, it's quite a bit slow to start up compared to something like Sublime, but when you're opening a file for the first time, you get that horrid little drawer of the text without the tokenization and the syntax, and then the syntax gets drawn in, and it bugs the hell out of me. And VS Code, as you might expect, feels very Windows-like, which in itself isn't a bad thing. I mean, heck, I'm one of the few people that really liked the Windows Phone UI, but a Windows-like interface feels a little bit foreign when you're spending all your time on a Mac system. This video isn't about me ragging on VS Code, it's just to try and explain to you why, when nearly the rest of the world is going towards VS Code, I'm staying put. Oh, and just one more little thing on the VS Code thing. You're still paying for it. You're not paying for it directly in your dollar bills, but you're paying for it with your usage and with your personal information. So that's fine, but don't be under any illusions that you're paying something to get that editor. It isn't free. Now, I know some of you are going to have very strong opinions about that, so I'm going to park that little bit up there. Let me know in the comments, and you can rage all you want there. For now, let's move on. So as a long-time Mac user, I occasionally get nostalgic about the Mac applications from a few years back that I used to use. Applications like Espresso that were just so wonderful to look at. I mean, even that graphic at the beginning, the opening graphic by Verlee Peters, was just magnificent. And that's something you really don't see an awful lot of with Mac applications these days. I think those kind of applications just felt a little bit premium. It made the experience of using those applications feel a little bit special. And that very protracted introduction brings me finally to Panic's Nova. Now, when Nova first came out in, I think it was like September 2020, I took an initial look at it and I thought it was a little bit ridiculous. Visually, it just looked too blingy, almost ostentatious. I was used to my code editor looking very dark and drab, very dour, a bit like the coding equivalent of the Dalai Lama's bedroom. And here was Nova looking like some kind of 70s pimp with its bright pink colours and its glowing text and its dazzling little interface flourishes. Just to be clear, I've never actually been in the Dalai Lama's bedroom, just wanted to clear that up. I don't know why, but I was thinking about application interfaces and how nice they used to be, and that got me thinking about Panic's Nova, and I don't know why, but I decided to give it another go. Panic has actually reset the trial period, so if you tried Nova way back then and you get it down again now, you can still try out the 28 or 30-day trial, no problem. So the version I got down was version 6.2, and I've had it running on a couple of machines, and the one I'm going to show you on in a minute is a fairly fresh install, so we can see how you change settings and whatnot. Now I'm going to make it quite clear, if you did only look at Nova when it first came out, right now compared to how it was back then, it's a completely different beast. Not necessarily visually, but in its capabilities and the way it manages to do so much extra stuff. Crucially, for me, it feels very fast. So what I'm going to do now is give you a brief tour of the Nova interface, and then I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff that I really like about Nova, another bunch of stuff that I'm really not so keen on. Okay, so here's the start screen for Nova. I'm going to just start here by giving you a blank document so you can see the interface as it is initially. And you can see you can start with a new project, you can open something existing, or you can clone a project down from a Git repository. The first thing I want to show you that is particularly Mac-like, I suppose, is the preferences. Now, you might go, come on, Ben, preferences. How often do you care about the preferences? It isn't about that. It's just the fact that you forget how nice these sorts of little bits of interface can be when you see them done for the particular OS that you're working with. Git accounts is quite good, so you can wire that up to, even self-hosted GitLabs, for example. Not bothered about any of that. Workspace, sidebar layouts. You can choose how the direction splits go, which you'll see those in a minute. Nice big list of all your key bindings here. Again, you can set a separate font there for your terminal if you want to. One of the particularly nice things is when it comes to like changing themes, is just that gradual fade between things. It's not like jarring, which I know is a very small thing, but it's a nice detail. You can see here this is how easy it is to install stuff. So let's go and we'll go to popular. We'll get the Nord theme in, say, and what else would be a good one? Material is probably quite nice. Nico. So I've got a few to show you there, and then let's say, for example, you wanted to stick Prettier in. That's how easy it is to install Prettier as a plugin, which is pretty amazing. What else might we need? TypeScript. And again, although it's very sort of graphical and it's not necessarily what you're used to if you are coming from something like VS Code or Sublime, that's actually quite nice. And then when it comes to swapping the themes, let's shut that down. You can see they'll appear in here now, and you can just easily swap. Let's change to something. Gosh, a lot of different material ones. Little things that you don't necessarily notice at first. You've got here, this connects to your remote server up here, so you can have your local and then your remote. If you're using something like FTP, SFTP, there's your find, and then you can see there's other things which I've not really got an awful lot of use out, but it's quite handy for seeing like the structure of a page here, for example, where you can just look at it flat, and obviously you can jump up and down the page with these things, which it's not something you use all the time, but it's quite nice to have nonetheless. No Git repository on this one at the minute, but I'll set that up in a minute. Clips I've not really used. Publish is handy if you're making changes to files and you want to just push them out. It's basically like having Transmit or some sort of FTP client built into Nova. So up there you can see you can hide the sidebar, a debug pane. You can change your sidebar over to that side, which I know some people are mad about that. They really like that, so that's pretty handy if you're one of those people. That's not something you can do with Sublime. You've also got this nice little thing there if you want to open a local terminal. That's pretty handy. Okay, so that's a very brief overview of the basic interface. What I'm going to do now is show you a bunch of the things I really like about Nova, and then we'll come over to the stuff that's maybe not so good. Sulky is a really, really cool thing you can do. So if you want to quickly open this into a split, you can just drag it over to where you want it. So, and you can see if you just want to change over to a full page layout, and then you want to split that again, you can just drag and drop those things. That's really quite handy. If I open a JavaScript file now, it's just absolutely instant. You know, the highlighting and everything is like the minute you open it, it's there. Scrolling up and down these pages, you know, even with the mini-map, you know, you've got absolutely no lag there, even if you get yourself a big old file. You know, there's nothing slowing you down there. You know, we looked at this preferences panel and swapping themes and installing extensions, and it's just really, really nice. It just makes it so easy to do that. Another thing that's quite good is you can just about make out here in the gutter, you've got these different indent levels that you can see, and that's how easy it is to sort of fold stuff up. I'm not a massive fan of folding ordinarily, but I really like this implementation. Another nice thing with CSS is you get these little color indicators here where you've got a hex value or color that it can discern, and when you click on them you get this bespoke color picker that comes up, which again, that's not the macOS native one, that's something particular to Nova, which is pretty cool, and you can change even to P3 colors, which is very fancy. Another thing that I like, but I could understand why at first it looks a bit nuts, is this. Look at the animation when you go over a bracket here. You see how you get the matching one, it does that kind of echo around it, which, I mean, it is a little bit blingy, but it's genuinely, I've found it quite useful. Things like this where you can choose the artwork for your project folder or make it a different colour if you like, which I know these are certainly non-essentials, but they're still quite nice. And then it gives you decent feedback here if we, let's initialize a Git repository here. That's pretty good. So it's pulled through my global Git credentials there. I'm not going to add a remote there, I'm just going to go done. So you can see I've added that git ignore, and immediately, thank goodness, all the node modules are out of there. But adding stuff in here, although I'm kind of used to doing it on the command line, it's still quite nice to do it there. You can see here for the project as well, you can set up paths for where you want to go in that server. You can set up a different server there. So you can have your sidebar area here, and then you might decide that you want to have a bit of Git information down there as well. So that's quite handy. And then you can, I think you can resize this. Yeah. So, you know, you can have a section up there for your files and then a section down here for your source control, or whichever one of these other things is most useful to you, whether that's the hierarchy view or whatever. There's a built-in, because it's got effectively Safari built in, if you've got a markdown file, you can press the little thing and get a little preview of your markdown file as well. It's also got WebKit essentially built into it, so although it's not super clean, it lets you do, you know, you can edit the HTML or rather copy the HTML out of there to get an export of your markdown file. Something else I've not really dug into at all yet is this tasks thing here, which you can set up build, run, clean tasks, etc. And you can choose there in terms of the scripts that you run, JavaScript, TypeScript, and obviously a bunch of other languages there. So that was a bunch of the good stuff. Now let me show you some of the things that I'm not so keen on. When I start Nova, I'd like it to just open the project that I was working on. I don't know if this is just because I'm used to Sublime, but I find it slightly irritating that the default is coming into this page, and I want it to just automatically come into the project that I was in before. Although you've got decent splitting with Nova, there isn't a good way of like doing like a 4-way split or something. You can see here in the splits, it's got some nice features for splits, but there's no easy way. It's not every day I want to do that, but occasionally it's nice to just have a shortcut key to get a 4-way split. I really wish there was some way of making these tabs a little bit deeper. They're quite shallow there. I'd like to have bigger text there. I'm also not a fan of this default OS way of expanding the tab to fit all the space. I don't know if that's just because I'm used to Sublime, where you get a tab that's as wide as the name of the tab, pretty much. Well, the fact that it's got a terminal built in is really good, but I'm not a massive fan of the fact that it's an entire tab and pane. I think it'd be really good if it could have some kind of like bubble out tiny little terminal here, because I tend to be using it just to run something like Vite to fire that up, or Eleventy or something of that nature, where I'm interested in seeing that things are continuing to go okay, but I don't necessarily need a whole window space there for it. You know, and if anybody could do something fancy in that regard, then panic other people to do it. The other option is it could just be a case where I need to look at this task thing here, and maybe that's going to be a better way to run the sort of tasks that I'm talking about. I'm going to be pretty picky here, but the speed at which it opens and closes the sidebar compared to Sublime. So if you compare this, I hesitate to say janky, but there's a little bit of judder there. Let me show you the same thing with Sublime. Here's Sublime. Just slightly smoother. Worryingly, every so often it does just crash and bomb out. Sublime literally never bombs out on me, maybe like once every 6 months. So that is a little bit worrying, and I hope they can manage to get that sorted out pretty quickly. It's got no go-to symbol and project functionality. VS Code suffers exactly the same, as only really Sublime that has this, and I find it indispensable. And I'm surprised other editors don't have this as kind of table stakes. Let me show you the sort of thing that I mean in Sublime. So let's suppose I'm editing something in Sublime and I'm looking at it in the browser, and I get a CSS selector from a DOM node, and I want to find that in my code base. With Sublime, you've got a one-click paste in a particular thing that you're after, and this is going to take me to the exact file that this lives in and to the exact point. So watch that. I press enter, and it's taken me directly to that exact selector, and that works across CSS, JavaScript, a bunch of other stuff. I find that a massive time saver. Rather than you get the markers where Git has changed, but you don't get any ability to diff that against what it was before. There's no extension syncing in Nova, which is a bit annoying if you've got a couple of machines and you want to sync your themes and settings across them. Selection's a little bit pants in Nova at the minute. The things like if I'm inside this file here, I'm going to go inside this area here with backticks. You can see there that Nova knows where the bounds of this backtick are, but from where my cursor, my caret is at the minute, there's no way to expand that out. So you're either having to do it manually with your mouse, or starting at a point and like starting there and dragging down. It's got no kind of expand selection capabilities at the minute. There's also nothing like transpose in Nova, which is, whether you know this or not, in Sublime you can select two areas like that and do a Control and T, and look at that swapped around, which is not something that you use every day, but I certainly miss it when it's not there. So that's some of the great and some of the not so great features of Nova. So what's it going to set you back? Nova's $99, and that includes a year of free updates. After a year, you can spend $49 and get another year's worth of updates for free. Now, if you don't want to take the next year's updates, you can stick quite happily with the version that you're at. You won't get any future updates, but that version will continue to run for perpetuity. Now, if you've got an old serial number for Coda or Coda 2, believe it or not, you can use that and get $20 off that initial price as well, so that brings the price down to $79. Now, for those people who've become used to something like VS Code where there's no initial outlay in terms of dollars, that might seem like a lot of money, but for me, I think that's entirely fair. I earn my living from a text editor, using a text editor every day, so the fact that the companies are bringing out new ones and pushing the bounds of what we can do with these text editors, I'm happy to support them. I think that's a very fair price. One really smart move I think Panic have done here is they've written their Extensions API in JavaScript, and I think that's a much safer bet in terms of getting people on board and getting a load of extensions written. Just the ubiquity of JavaScript, it seems to me that it just creates an environment where more of these extensions get made and more of them get made quickly. Now, I'm always giving lip service to the performance of Sublime Text, so now let's take a look at how Nova compares to Sublime and also VS Code. You can see here Nova's at 0.6, 0.7, Sublime Text 0.4. Code, if you add them all up, it's bigger than the other two, no problem. 0.3, 0.3, then you've got 0.2, 0.1, and there's loads more as you scroll down here. There's boatloads of different ones. So Code, almost certainly more hungry on resources there. Memory, I imagine it would be exactly the same. So yeah, we've got code up here, 350 in its first instance, but then you've got all these other ones here, look. There's quite a few. So if you add those up, and there is a lot of them, it's infinitely more resource heavy than Nova or Sublime Text. Nova and Sublime Text, they're just about level pegging. Sublime's still a little bit lighter than Nova. There are some wonderful, unique flourishes to Nova and some genuinely useful tools. But as of right now, there are still some particular shortcomings that just hold it back. The selection methods are just a little bit lacking, and the fact that I'm getting the odd crash, as infrequent as it might be, still makes me a little bit cautious. But the speed of this editor, the cadence at which updates are happening from Panic, and the JavaScript Extensions API which they've got, makes me very hopeful that this is going to be an editor to watch for future. So for me, for now at least, Nova is my number 2, just behind Sublime Text. If this was useful, please subscribe, tell your kids, your wife, your grandma, all that sort of stuff. Also, if Sublime Text is of interest to you, in the next couple of months I'm going to have a course on Sublime Text coming out. Not on YouTube, there'll be bits of it on YouTube, it will be a paid course, but please subscribe, go to the website, get the newsletter, all that sort of stuff. It would be lovely to have you along. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.